Thank you ever so much for taking us through the story of Staurosporin, all the way to fragments and then a lead candidate within these MNK systems. What I think we should do now is explain to people how you built this narrative using some of Nanome's tools. Obviously, the core tool we used today was the SceneViewer within Nanome. So to begin with, what I'll do is I'll show people how you can find the SceneViewer. Then I'll let you steal presenter from me. And
That's
maybe
fine.
we can make some edits to a scene and explain to them what the buttons do within the SceneViewer menu. And hopefully show people how easy it is actually to build one of these narratives. So to start with, I'm going to show you where SceneViewer lives. It's a little bit buried within Nanome, but once you find it, it's actually pretty easy to use. So easiest way to get to the SceneViewer is through the Vault plugin, and that can be found in our stacks. And right at the bottom, we have Vault down here. So if I open our Vault, you can see in here we have things like MyOrg, which is our organizational account, a shared account, which is for a public one, and then our private accounts. And this is effectively is just a distributed file system that's securely stored on Nanome's cloud servers. I'm just going to actually just use the very bottom button over here, Actions. This Actions button gives you different functions you can do in a given folder within the Nanome Vault. And the one we're using today is Open SceneViewer. And by clicking on that button, it opens up a menu that looks like this over here. And you can see in here there's different, effectively molecular slides. And these molecular slides contain different representations or collections of representations that you can step through very quickly. It's kind of like quick loading different files from within the Vault.
Fantastic. Yeah. Thanks, Simon. We were going through MNK and we were talking about, what are the interactions, etc. So what I would like to do is to go through a step on how to prepare a scene for us. As you can see, we've prepared some scenes here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this stuff in this room, looking at Staurosporin bound. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare a new scene, which further explains what we've got in this space. So what I do is I go to here where the edit mode is off. I'm going to turn that one on. You can see now edit mode is on. And what I would love to do is to show you how to create a new scene. And we're going to employ a few new tools for us to create this scene within Nanome. So the scene I'm going to make is a scene that allows us to navigate the key interactions in the binding site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new scene here. And in a second, you'll see that on our menu, we've created a new scene.
The one that's called Scene 2, yeah?
Scene 2, yeah, that's the one.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. And so instead of calling it Scene 2, which is generic, actually you can move it up and down on your slide deck as you want, as you would like. If it was a PowerPoint slide, you would want maybe this to be. So if I went to this scene, instead of calling it Scene 1, I would actually want to annotate it. So I'm going to call this Interactions. Right. Interact. So, and I'll give it a description, but because we don't have much time, I'm just going to type in a few letters here to show you the description is going to be these letters that I have typed, and then I'll update. So now we've got a scene called Interact. And what we're going to do in this scene is we're going to show the key interactions between Staurosporin in orange and the protein itself. In order to generate those interactions, Simon, what we're going to do is we're just going to look at the highlights, at least select the residues around the active site that we want to show the interactions for. You could do this manually, like this. So I've selected Staurosporin itself, and also I'm going to select some of the key residues that I know. I'm going to select our gatekeeper that we discussed before. I'm going to select some residues from the hinge region. So I'll select this methionine here, this lysine here, and this arginine on the hinge. And so I've selected some key residues. Remember at the top we talked about the DFG loop. So here's the D aspartate here from the DFG loop. And I'm also going to select this glutamate here and this lysine. So these are key residues that we have already discussed the importance of. And so instead of us just looking at them and saying, well, they're very important, what we can do is actually calculate interactions within Nanome. And the way we would do that within Nanome is go to our stacks, Or indeed, we can go to this modify. But I'll go to our stacks because this is quite an easy way of navigating all the tools that we've got in Nanome. Here I'm going to calculate chemical interactions. And I'll activate our stack here, and I'll just run it. I'll just close this so that these things are not in our way. And what this menu allows me to do now is to calculate all interactions between selected residues, right? That's what we want to show in this site. We know which are the key residues, but we want to know what type of interactions are being formed. Now, I might have my own biases as to how we do the interactions, but our Nanome allows you to do this automatically so that at least everybody is using the same reference frame. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate hydrogen bond interactions, ionic interactions, halogen interactions, pi-pi interactions, and I know for a fact that there are no metal ions, so I'll just remove those, and I want to also show hydrophobic interactions because I know that this is particularly greasy molecule, which is really lipophilic, so it must be forming some hydrophobic interactions. So here we go. We're just going to calculate those, and it will prepare, and hopefully in a few seconds you'll see it loading those interactions in our space.
Perfect. I can see these new little chemical interaction lines have appeared.
Yeah. As you can see, there are some key interactions that this thing is doing. It's forming quite a lot of hydrophobic interactions in purple, and it's also forming quite a lot of so it is really driven by grease, as you can see. There's not many polar interactions except a few. Here is one polar interaction here, which is a hydrogen bond interaction. Yeah. Okay. And so now we've created a scene of interactions between the small molecule and the protein. How do we save it? Well, we just go and update it here.
Is that this button over here you just pressed? Yeah.
Yes, this button here, which is update, and I'm just going to update it. So what it's doing is taking everything in the room, updating it to a scene. And now we've finished creating that scene. We can either move it down, because I know for a fact I'm going to describe the binding site, and then I'm going to go to show the interactions, and then I'm going to the rest of the story. So now we've got this, and what I'll do is I'll save this desk to our vault. I'll call it a new slide deck, for instance. I might call this slide deck 1111. And then I'm going to save that. And again, it automatically saves it to our vault. And here we just select where we want to save it. Yeah, we choose our selection. We're going to go out and save it.
So right now, I can't actually see your vault because obviously it's private to your account. We don't want to allow people to jump in. One of the things I think is important to say at this stage is recently there was an update within Nanome that allows chemical interactions to be persistent on the vault. Before, when you generated chemical interactions, they were only existing within the workspace you were in. But when you did save, they would disappear. Recent updates have allowed us to actually pre-store these as part of scenes. So not only now can you do things like coloration, surfaces, and have all that saved, ready to go as a representation, but we can also highlight these key greasy interactions ready to go so that when you start talking to people, that narrative is pre-constructed.
So you mean I can actually go to the former scene and just see what the protein looked like before?
Yep.
And when we go into the interact scene, we should be able to see the interactions.
There we go. And now they're loading in.
Here they are. So we've got our chemical interactions. So if you had a really important story to tell about specific interactions, you could annotate them, put them in your slide deck, and share the slide deck with somebody else, or actually use it as part of the presentation as we did today.